People would rather be unhappy than uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to make changes. And so people will choose unhappy over uncomfortable, even if they know the only way to fix unhappy is to be uncomfortable.
Hey, Walker, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Thank you, Samuel. I really appreciate the invitation, and I'm so glad to be here. I've heard so many nice things. Also, to your listeners, I want you to do Samuel a favor. And if you're enjoying this podcast, this information you're getting for free, why don't you go and subscribe to his podcast and also leave him a review? The more reviews you leave, the higher his podcast, Coffee with Closers, goes up the recommended list. So please, y'all, because of what the value he's given for you, why don't you go ahead and sign up for his podcast and leave him a review?
I appreciate that plug right there. So you're a podcast host. So obviously you have accomplished a lot. You've been in the professional sales field for a very long time, and were part of a Sandler sales system and training for a long time. And then you went on to be an entrepreneur yourself, and you have a upcoming book that you're publishing. So you're an author, entrepreneur, sales trainer, speaker. There's so many titles to your job. Can you share with our audience a little bit about your entrepreneur journey, how you got to where you are, and how you started the sales training business?
Sure. I will start with this. I was undiagnosed ADHD until about age 40. And so I knew that my brain did not work like other people's brains. I've always known that. And when I was very young, I thought I was mentally deficient some way because I didn't do great in school. I mean, I did okay. I mean, I could figure stuff out, but that was not my strong point. And it's funny, when I got out into the world, I was like, oh my God, this is so much better than sitting in that classroom. But I've always had lots of energy and had lots of ideas and this kind of thing, which I think drives a lot of people around me crazy. And I had several careers. I worked in banking for a couple of years, and I don't remember if I quit or got fired there, but that was not a great fit for me. And then I got into commercial real estate, where I was going to make my fortune. And I did that for, 11, 12, 13 years. I had worked for another company, worked for a developer, and then I started my own practice there as an advisor. And then I had a coach that I loved, or I hired a coach. I didn't need a coach, of course, because I was great. I knew people and I could talk to anybody. So that's all you need to be a great salesperson, right? One of the first lies. And so anyway, I hired a sales coach, and he opened my eyes to see how much psychology was involved in sales and how to do it right, and the process and that kind of stuff. I was like, wow. I became a client of his, and for 3 or 4 years, and my commercial real estate practice really took off. It was going great. And I was referring my coach many clients, and I loved what he was doing. I was an avid, I just ate it up. And one day he called me and said, I hate you up. I need somebody with an entrepreneur mind like yours to help me grow this sales training practice that we have. And I thought for about, 10 minutes. And I said, that sounds like fun. And so it's amazing how fast you can go out of business. And so I closed up my consulting practice in commercial real estate, and then I moved on to go work with him. And we worked together for 11 years, and we made a lot of money. We had a really good business. I had a lot of fun. It was basically, by the end of my career there, I was probably an exaggeration, but I was pretty much mailing it in and making plenty of money. But somehow in the process, my business partner and I started to see things differently. We ended up having different goals, different things, and my ADD brain just going a million miles an hour. And I just realized that I needed to make a change, that I was not able to, I couldn't keep doing what I was doing and keep my sanity if I ever had it. And it's pretty funny. I made the decision to switch, and I went to go have lunch with a client. I wasn't going to tell anybody. I just told my wife. We talked about it. And I sat down, and I wasn't going to say anything to my client, but he said, you look like, which, by the way, is a great way to greet somebody if you want to find out what's going on in their life. I was like, I said, I've got all this stuff going on, and I need to leave my business. It's just not where I need to be. And I said, look, I'm not getting along with my business partner. And I said, it's 50% my fault and 50% his fault. I look up, and he's giving me the stop sign. I said, what? And he said, it's 100% your fault. And I was like, okay, I know you're right, but tell me why. And he said, because if you give somebody else 50% fault, you're going to be mad at the wrong person forever. And I was like, he said, it's up to him to take whatever responsibility he wants to take for himself, but you need to own it 100%. I was like, exactly right. And the cool thing about that was that it helped me realize this was my fault. that I'd let things go and I should have no ill feelings towards him. And so when I went to go resign, I was able to say truthfully and honestly and from my heart, I'm so sorry. I screwed this up. It isn't working. And the only way I know to fix this is for me to leave. Which is not the approach I would have had my friend not reminded me. And so I left. I had no plan. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was almost 50, 2 kids in private school, just built a big, beautiful house, and my wife was ready to retire. So this was not, boys and girls, this is not a business decision I would recommend for the faint of heart. I had about 90 days living expenses in the bank. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I figured the world would come to me. And guess what? Nobody ever came to offer me a job. And so I said, all right, I had a 3-year non-compete with my old company. And I was like, okay, can't do training and coaching. So I got into the outsourced VP of sales business for about 2 years, where companies would hire me. I had 3 or 4 clients at any given time, or 2 to 4 clients at any given time as their outsourced VP of sales. What I learned pretty quickly was that any company that would hire me for that position, they had a major problem. Either that, and sometimes it was a sales problem, sometimes it was not a sales problem. But what happened was, if I made it better, then they would let me go and hire somebody full-time, which was the plan all along. I didn't want to be a full-time sales manager. If it didn't get better, then it was awful and I was stuck in the mud and I had to fire them or they fire me. In the meantime, it was hard to go get new clients. And so I was just this up and down, horrible life. I wasn't very good at it at all. And number 2, it was a very business model I created for myself. So a friend of mine said, why don't you get back into training? And I said, I've still got 6 months left on a non-compete. And he said, sounds like a good time to get your business set up. And they said, why else? I said, well, I don't have any money for a training room. I'm near broke because of this thing. They said, have you ever heard of Zoom? This is 2016, maybe 2017. I was like, no, what's that? He said, online platform. I'm like, okay. And then he said, why else? And I said, well, because I don't have any material. He said, Walker, you've got 10,000 hours material in your head. You just need to write it down and make it yours. And you got 6 months to do it. Are you in, or you want to keep making excuses? I was like, he got me. And so I said, you know what, I'm in. And so I committed to that. And the day my non-compete was over, we announced something called the No BS Sales School, which I told my mother stood for No Bad Salespeople. Everybody knows what it means. We created a sales process that takes away all the that happens between buyers and sellers, and teaching salespeople, how do we be honest, transparent, kind, and not waste people's time in a way that we know exactly why somebody buys that they don't buy, and we can move on with our life. So anyway, I built that program for individuals, for people. It was a program I wished I'd had in my 20s and 30s, something that was approachable, that was psychology based, that was smart, that was affordable, that anybody could come just join. When I was in business, sales training happened through your company, and often it was a day. We're going to have a day of training with some old guy reading from a book. It sucked, right? And I wanted to make it accessible to anybody that was committed to getting better. And so I thought we could scale that thing up to a couple of hundred people. I got it to about 50. They were paying me I charged a little bit of money, $99 a month, no contracts, to get going. And I figured I could scale it. One of my clients came to me and said, do you do this for companies? I was like, I can. And so I went and talked to the boss, and all of a sudden I had a corporate client. I was like, boy, this is better. I like the individuals. They're fun because they're committing their own money, but we can start working with companies too. So over the past, I guess, 7 or 8 years, we have a practice both with, we do private training, corporate training, and then we also do this group training for individuals. And so we went from, I had to sell my house, moved to a rental house about a third of the size. My kids they were so mad, but we had to make a choice, keep the house or keep the kids in private school. And I live in South Carolina and we made the choice that private school was to protect the kids, and that the house was to protect our ego. And so we said, ego's gone at this point. Let's protect the kids and get rid of the house. And we lived in that rental house for 3 years and eventually worked our way out. We bought another house now that we love, and been, like I said, this month is about the 10th year that I've been out on my own and on this journey. And it has been a wild ride, and one that I wouldn't, as people say, I wouldn't trade it for anything. But One, I also wouldn't wish on anybody. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. It's been quite a journey. And my family are superstars for putting up with all the crap that it took to get here today.
Yeah. That's a couple of key lessons there too, right? You got to have some good friends in your life that can challenge you, right? Instead of just sympathizing with you and say, yeah, man, it's 50% the other person's problem. It's 50% you got to do what you got to do, win this fight. But you're walking away from a cushy job, like you said, was you're mailing it in, had a consistent flow of income, and you had a comfortable life, but you decided it was time for you to part ways and go do something else, which you had no plans in sight as how it was going to work out. So entrepreneurship, right? Like sometimes you do need people to challenge you to do things that you probably aren't thinking, you could do, but also you cannot have everything mapped out perfectly for an entrepreneurial journey to take off. Like you got to take some first steps.
There's a poster that I saw that I love. I saw it about a month ago and I saved it on my phone. It says, "We don't do this because it's easy. We do this because we thought it would be easy."
That's the truth, yes.
And that seems to be the thing that resonates the most with me. I had no idea how hard this would be, but I thought it'd be much easier. And you know what? It's all about, one thing I like about goal setting, I do this with my clients, is that they are to achieve the goals that you have to achieve. You have to become somebody new. Because who you are right now has got you where you are right now. And you have to become somebody else with all of your same qualities, right? But also shedding some things to get to the new place. And so I can honestly say, while I still am me at my core, I'm a different person than when I thought about this or thought I'm going to give this a go, or even 5 years ago when I was struggling and having a really tough time. And like we say now, it's still, people say the old overnight success lie. And that's those of us, maybe it looks, and again, I don't think anybody thinks I'm an overnight success. I don't think anybody considers me a success, but maybe it looks simple. But what people don't see is the long nights and the worry and the oh my God, and how can I make payroll and all those things. Now, again, as we say, we traded our 40-hour mail it in job for 90 hours a week and worried about everything. And that's just part of the joy. But it's not the right thing for most people.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing, the stamina that it takes to actually building something. It does have some reward, and it also has like completely a different set of joy that you get, right? It's like having children. Like children is not an easy thing in life. There's just a lot of responsibility. They're watching everything that you do, and you embarrass yourself by saying, man, I just set that in for my kids. I don't want them learning these sort of bad habits from me, but at the same time, even with everything that goes into raising them up, it's so rewarding. If anything, it actually made me a better son to my dad, because I was 100%. More respectful and appreciate everything he sacrificed to raise me up. So I think it's kind of the same way that I think you enjoy, even with all the hardship that comes with entrepreneurship, you actually enjoy it a lot more because you're building this baby you have.
Yeah, and I built it. And I hope it doesn't happen, but if I lost everything today, I know with no doubt I could do it again.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it
faster
again,
too,
but I could. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, that's essentially the thing. So obviously you've trained over the years, right? You said over 10 years that you're doing it on your own. And prior to that, you've worked
11 years before.
Yeah. And then you've also worked as a salesperson yourself. And you said you trained over 100 different people in different industries, company sizes. So what are some common misconceptions or that you've seen in terms of what it takes to be a good salesperson?
So there are 3 areas, and most people look to the sales trainer guy for just one of the 3, which is a mistake. So the first thing that, again, 3 pieces. One is activity, your actions, and the second one is your attitude, and the third one is your approach. And of all of those things, I would say consistent activity is the most important thing. People often, they want the shortcut. They want the easy button. What are those words that I can say to close that deal? And maybe they're those words, but if you don't have enough meetings set, if you aren't driven to do the hard work over and over again, then you can have all the fancy technique in the world and you won't have the opportunity to use it. I tell people, if I had a choice of somebody who is called like a behavior animal, who could make calls and go to networking events and set appointments, but they sucked at technique, versus somebody who was a technical genius, but they wouldn't pick up the phone, I would take the first guy 9 times out of 10. Because I believe you can help somebody with their technique, but it's hard to train drive. It's hard to train motivation. I don't think we can motivate other people. I think that ultimately motivation's got to come from the inside. And by the way, I'll just share my Achilles heel. I get introduced sometimes as a motivational speaker, and it makes me want to it's like, it's one of the worst put downs you could give to me in my mind, because it's short-lived. It's a waste of people go in there and and understand there needs to be a part of training that is entertainment. Because it needs to be something that people can approach and feel and understand, but there has to be actionable things that are part of it, right? Have to be things you can actually go do. And motivation is kind of a weird thing that way. So anyway, back up. So action is the first thing. Attitude is the second. What are the beliefs that you have? Are you comfortable with silence? Are you comfortable talking about money? Do you believe you should be there? Do you believe you belong? Or do you believe that it's okay that you're not going to close every deal? And one of my mindsets is no is my second favorite word. I hear it all the time. And I'd much rather hear a no now than after 6 meetings. And I've given somebody a proposal. I want to hear no in the first meeting if I can get it, or the second, or as soon as I can. So I don't play this game with myself of, oh, maybe this is going to be different, because almost never different.
Yeah. So action, attitude, and what was the third one?
And the last one is approach, which is your strategy. How do I get to these people? How do I get to these people? What do I do to get in front of them? And then the second part of that is your system or your process. What's the process that you're following? And the third part of that is actually the tactics, which are the questioning strategies. And they are what's your ideal outcome that you're looking for? And all these things that are built around kind of the sales process. How do you actually put that to use? And there are 3 parts to each one of those, but the last one is the one that's more interesting to talk about. The attitude part is where all excuses are made. The economy, my company, our prices are too high. I can't go talk to these people. They'll never buy from us. Those are all negative beliefs that keep people from doing the hard. Or there's only so much success in the world. If somebody else is successful, then I can't be. All those negative, horrible, harmful thoughts that we have that are just a waste of energy.
Yeah. I think some of the things that you've mentioned, like I think it's the will versus the skill concept, right? There's a lot of, like you explained, a lot of people have maybe the skill to do a sales job, but they just don't have the will to put in the work that's necessary to get the outcome. I think that's super. We can always when we're hiring for a salesperson, we're like, man, this guy has the nice charisma. He knows the sales tactics, but then you give him the job and then you come to find out he's super lazy and he doesn't want to put in the work.
Yeah.
He thinks cold calling is dead and he doesn't want to do the hard work to get the meeting or even follow up after having had that conversation, right? Because that all takes a lot of effort. So I think that's a big, big concept that I think if entrepreneurs, business leaders can understand, okay, you got to not only look the skill, but you also need to make sure that the person that you're trying to hire and put in that role has the will to do it.
Yeah. What is the past experience that shows that? And I think one of the worst things people look at is, oh, they've been successful at company ABC. They're our competitors, so he can bring all these clients over here. And what we find often is if you can pick up 25% of those, they'll promise all of them will come over with them. But usually 25 to 30% is what you can count on. And then you just hope you don't get sued because your guy probably has a non-solicit or a non-compete of some kind. But past performance with one of your competitors is not a great indicator of what they'll do for you.
Yeah. So how do you actually uncover whether or not this person is actually going to put in the work and have the discipline? Like you were talking earlier too, it's a discipline concept, right? It's not fun to do some of these things that we're talking about. How do you look for that in a person when you're trying to hire?
There are a couple, and look, when we hire people, oftentimes in their interview, they're going to show us their best self on their best day. Right? Which is why interviewing is so hard. Anybody that says they're great at interviewing salespeople either has maybe done it once and got lucky, or they're lying, because it's hard. It is I don't know if it's an art or a science, but it's harder. It's the harder of those two Two things. One is ask them stories. How did you build your current territory? And listen for specifics. I made calls in these areas. I talked. Another thing that if somebody's going to have to be on the phone or make prospecting calls that I tell people to do after the second interview, maybe when they bring them in to talk to them face to face, is say, we've got a list of 20 prospects on that piece of paper right there and their phone numbers. I'm going to put you in your room, take your cell phone. I want you to call all 20 of them. Let's see how many appointments you can set. And what you find is you'll find some people that'll go sit down and they'll look at the list and they'll move around the table and they'll look at their phone. They'll put the phone down and they won't do anything. And others, maybe make one phone call and then they'll quit. What I like to do is leave somebody there for 10 or 15 minutes, keep an eye on them. I don't expect them to set an appointment, but I want to see how many calls they actually make. I want to see that actually gets done. And it's a pretty good indicator, right? I want to ask what they've done in the past. I want them to explain to me what behaviors they do on a regular basis to grow their business. And if they say, I've already got this big book, and I'm say, all right, help me understand, how am I going to know, tell me why I should believe you that you're going to go grow the business. Past performance, recent past performance is a pretty good indicator. And again, if they've been riding a big book for a long time, hadn't brought in a bunch of new clients in a while, they've been at a company for 10 to 12 years, and they can't talk to you about their specific prospecting plan that they have and still continue to use, chances are they're coasting. And that's really not the kind of person that I'd want to hire for my company if I was trying to grow. I don't think hiring people, oftentimes if we hire people that maybe have the same type customers that we have, but maybe you're not in the same industry, might have better luck than hiring. Because often what happens is somebody gets pressured to leave their company because they're not getting it done. We've got somebody in our company we pressure to leave because they're not getting it done. They both quit. They high five in the parking lot, and one company hires the other person's loser, and the other person gets hired. And like, oh, look, we hired somebody for our industry. They're great. Right? And they fight the same problem over and over. This happens more often than we like to think.
Yeah. So obviously there's the finding the right quality talent who actually has some performance history and all of those things. And then I'm pretty sure some of it is a lot to do with the training and coaching and guidance that you provide.
Yep.
Give some examples of how the training, some details on how the training can really help a salesperson to rise to the higher level that they can perform at.
The first thing we do with clients when they hire somebody new, or when we take them on for training, is we'll do sales assessments, a skills assessment for their team, right, or the individual they're hiring. We may get several candidates. We'll do skills assessments on all three of them. And there's one of these obnoxious online tests that you take that you answer the least bad of four bad answers over and over again. And what I tell people is, if you are mad during the middle because you could have made any different choice, and you get to the end, you say, there's no way this thing could have learned anything about me because I could have answered these questions any way differently. You probably did it right. And we get the results back, and it'll show us pretty good. The assessment I use will show you pretty well what are the skills they have, what are the mindsets they have, where are the weaknesses. But so let's pretend we get those, and then we base the training and the coaching around how do we help them bridge the gap between one place to another. So if somebody struggles, like talking about money, right, we'll spend a fair amount of time. Where'd that thought come from? Where is that? Did it come from your parents? Were they afraid to talk about money? And how do we get over that? And to train them to begin to ask questions like that. And so we work on the mental stuff. And then we start talking about the sales process. And so in my world, we have a 7-step sales process. The first part of that, though, is showing them what buyers do. How buyers manipulate salespeople and selling companies to give away free information. And there's a 4-step process that once you recognize it, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And the first step in the buyer's process, you've probably seen this before, Samuel. Somebody reaches out to you, and typically their first question, or around their first question, what they want to know is, how much does it cost? They're going to ask some question around money to try and figure it out. And if you make it past step 1 and you end up going to the meeting or whatever, having the meeting, the second step is they're probably pretty nice. They'll ask you a bunch of questions. You'll talk, share your expertise. They'll become more engaged. You give them, and they ask you a bunch of questions. You give them more information. You're very excited, right? And then they say, how about put that in writing? I want to make sure we put that in writing before we had a great conversation, but I just want to make sure I understand. And so step number 1 is ask about money. Step number 2 is get free consulting. Step number 3 is we put together a proposal. We go show it to them. We go over all the stuff with them, answer any questions they have, and they're still being very nice. We're ready to overcome any objections, but oftentimes we're not getting objections because they don't want to wrestle with a sales guy and they know you've got an answer, right? They don't want to do that. And so oftentimes, instead of saying, we'd like this better than that, is they say, this looks really good, Samuel. Love what you have. This is really good. Woo, you guys are smart. My current company, they're not doing that. Apples to apples, can't see any reason why I wouldn't give you guys a good shot. I need to think about it. I need to talk to my partner. He's in Europe right now. Or I need to sleep on this, or we need to gather some thoughts, or we're talking to a couple other people, but please, this is great. How about call me back in a week? So step number 1, ask about money. Step number 2, get free consulting. Step number 3 is say nice things and get rid of you. And so we get there. So they say, call me next week, call me 2 weeks, whatever. And so we call them back. They see it's us. And they see it's us calling. They've gone to their current guy and said, hey, Samuel, this guy said they can do this for our marketing. Can you do that? And guess what? Their guy says, oh yeah, I can do that. Or they take your thing and show it to somebody else and say, oh, these guys said they could do this. Can you do that? Or they do it themselves. So anyway, so we call back and they see it's us calling, oh, I like that Samuel guy. He's really nice, but we're not going to do business with him. So I'm going to send him a voicemail. So we leave a message. Our heart has died a little bit because we got voicemail. And then we wait over the week. We'd say to ourselves, oh, they must have been gone for the weekend. I'll call them Monday or Tuesday. Boss asks you on Monday, hey, how'd that call go? Oh yeah, he loves me, but I must have missed him. I'll call him back tomorrow. So you call him back on Tuesday because you got to follow up. And he sees you calling on Tuesday and he looks at his phone and goes, oh man, Samuel, he's such a great guy, but I'm not going to do, I don't want to have this conversation right now. And so he sends you to voicemail. Heart dies a little bit more. And now it's Thursday, Friday. Boss has asked a couple of times, and you were told you got to be persistent. And so you call him back a third time, right? And you call, and he sees you again. He goes, why doesn't Samuel get a clue of what's happening? Why didn't he get it? And we hang up the phone. You never talk to him. He's and this is not the way to build a trusting relationship. Yeah. And nobody wins that situation. You don't win because you waste your time. He doesn't win because he probably didn't pick the right person. And the competitor may not win either because they got beat at them on their price, but we don't care about them. But it's a waste of time. But this is how most salespeople go through. They expect this to happen. And they say, I just got to learn how to follow up better. Don't follow up. We got to figure out how not to follow up, how to figure out at the end of each meeting whether or not we're going to get a yes or no to something. I'm a big believer in this concept. You probably read Robert Cialdini's book, 7. It's called The Power of Influence. Have you ever read? You ever heard of Robert Cialdini before?
It's a very long book. It's a very long book, yes.
It's a very long. Here's what I'd suggest you do. Go to ChatGPT and say, please summarize Robert Cialdini's Power of Influence in 5 paragraphs, and it will give you it's a great way. By the way, if somebody gives you a whole list of books to read, go to ChatGPT and say, here are the books. How about summarize the main ideas from all these and save yourself the time. But one of Cialdini's powers of influence, so the rule is called reciprocity. If I do this for you, will you do this for me? If I do this for you, will you do this for me? And oftentimes salespeople think it's implied, but we can't read their minds and they can't read ours. And so if we want something to happen, so what we might say is, hey, look, I'm happy to meet with you and talk about and share with you all that we would do. If I'm okay doing that, will you be okay telling me at the end of the meeting whether or not you want to hire us to do it? And at the beginning of every meeting, have an ideal outcome in your mind. And what you might say is typically at the end of a meeting like this, we're deciding whether or not you sign an engagement letter or whether or not you hire us to do an audit. And that's one of the things I teach people a fair amount is if you have something big that you sell, and oftentimes it's hard for people to swallow that in one bite. And so we have we call it a monkey's fist. It's a long story, but you sell something small. It's an audit, it's a survey, it's an analysis, it's something, right, that you sell ahead of time in a small package that when what you can say is, and believe it, right? It's just a one-off. It doesn't obligate you to buy any more from me, doesn't obligate to sell to you after this. But basically what you're doing is you're getting paid to do a proposal. And what we find is that once somebody's written you a check one time for something small, it's not guaranteed, but there's a much higher chance that you get hired for the whole thing because they've already gone through the decision-making process. They've already got enough pain, right, to say, we got to address this and figure it out. And they've spent some kind of money. So you have to go through that process. It's a nice disqualifier there. If somebody says, no, if you have a $20,000 thing you're selling, and somebody says, no, I'm not paying you for a $2,000 thing, then you might realize maybe it's not that big of a deal, or they don't trust me enough to do this. So if they won't pay you for it, you got to think about 13 reasons why you might do it for free. And I got to tell you, I'd have a hard time doing it for free.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
When I was in the commercial real estate business, one of the things I learned from my coach, I worked a lot with buyers. And I really enjoyed working with buyers because it's more of a puzzle solving thing. And I told him one day, my coach, I said, I've worked 13 people in the past 3 months and nobody's bought anything. It really pissed me off. He goes, how much do you charge them to work with you? And I said, nothing. He goes, why not? And I said, because nobody does that in my business. He said, so why aren't you doing that? I was like, so what I learned to do was to tell people, I charge $5,000 to work with buyers, to take somebody on. Here's why people would hire me. They're worried they don't want to get screwed in the deal. Or they say they want somebody to help them with due diligence so they don't have the time to do that. Or commercial real estate isn't their main business and they need somebody who's in it every day to help make the thing go smoothly, or at least tell them, don't do this, it's a bad deal. And so it's funny because I didn't know anybody else who did that. I had several people that told me no, but it's funny, the people that said yes, the first guy that did it said, I didn't know a service like this existed. I had no idea. And all of a sudden, he referred me to somebody else and he referred me to somebody else. And so from there, and the people who hated it, who said it would never work, were my competitors. Why would somebody pay you for the stuff they get for free from me? I'm like, I don't know. So anyway, it's the same with you. We can give away stuff, but stuff that people get for free proposals, they don't put any value in them.
Yeah. And I was laughing because I was reliving some of my own past behavior is why I was laughing, because what you shared is exactly what happens, right? They ask a lot of questions and they were expecting us to do. And I think this is also, like you said, in the commercial real estate space, everybody works for commission only, and they're hoping that you can make that sale and then you make your big check. And most in the digital marketing world, all the agencies offer free audits and free consultation because they will go look at the traffic, look at the competitor, look at the prior ad performance, provide a bunch of recommendations, then create a custom proposals and present that to them. So we shifted away from that about 5-6 years ago.
Good for you.
Because we came to the realization that we were doing a lot of free consultations. And we have, like you said, we have smaller engagement up front that they go through that exercise, and we immerse ourselves into the business a lot more, build a strategy, and then sell that initial strategy first before any execution. And we learned it the hard way. After being in business 18 years, we realized, man, the amount of hours that we were spending in free consultation was crazy. And I still get what you are describing, where they come and say, hey, oh, the other companies already did the audit. They're already doing presentation. I said, then why do you need to have the free record? Why are we still having the conversation? You should probably make a decision about one of those guys. They probably already given you the best recommendation. Just take care of it. So I think it's hard to make that shift because you're afraid of losing. Especially, I think you've trained both high volume sales organizations that has a lot of opportunities in the pipeline, and then smaller organizations that they're not seeing as many prospects every month. So how do you have the discipline and the mindset to be able to think, I can afford to lose this opportunity. I just need to get a no now, as opposed to wasting and having a hope of selling them in the future. How do you develop that?
It's a really great question. And what I tell people to think about is, if you're trying to adopt this mindset and all of a sudden you have the largest prospect of your life that is coming in and they want to talk to you, and this is like a giant deal for you, then I got to tell you, emotionally, it would probably be too hard to do this. But think about the ones that come to you that are too small, or they're probably a pain in the butt, or you're not sure you want them. Those are the ones you say, hey, look, I don't know if this makes sense for you. Before we work with anybody, we charge $1,000, $5,000, $20,000, whatever the number is, $500, whatever your number is, to do an audit before we even consider doing work, before somebody should consider hiring us. Any reason we should keep talking, right? Knowing that we don't do free work any reason we should keep talking. And the people that aren't ready, they'll bail themselves. They'll say, oh, no, we can't do that. Thank you very much. Move on. So the people that don't have enough, that maybe only have 5 or 6 sales calls a year. You and I were talking early on. You said, you really don't. If we have 5 clients or whatever, we're full. We can't have more than that. And so a couple of things. Mindset matters, and understanding that a longer term mindset matters a lot. And so maybe people are coming to talk to you now, but they're not ready to change. And so one of the we've learned that there are 2 questions that somebody has to answer before we should give them any information. Number 1, they have to answer this themselves in their own head. Am I committed to doing something different or differently? Then and only then, after they've answered that in the affirmative, then they decide, who should I do that with? So what I want us to recognize is one way that somebody basically, I'm going to say, surrenders and says, we are going to do things differently. We're going to change the way we're currently doing things, right? We're going to let our current marketing guy go, or we're going to let our current marketing team go, or we're going to start hiring somebody else to help us with our marketing. That is a shift, a change. So what they have to do first is say, we have to help them see, is there a problem? Is there a problem right now with the way they're doing things? And then what are the consequences of that problem? So the problem we have is we're not getting enough inbound leads. The consequences of that are we don't think we're getting very good opportunities and we're getting desperate. And the last part is the personal impacts. And the personal impacts of that are my business isn't growing, we're not making the money, I may have to lay people off. So that's the part that would make somebody change. It's not that the leads suck. It's not that our volume of sales calls is down. That doesn't necessarily make somebody want to change. It's their personal impacts on them of what happens because of those things. Mm-hmm. And so if we get in the mindset that most people aren't ready for us yet, they're just not. It's too easy. People would rather be uncomfortable would rather be unhappy than uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to make changes. And so people will choose unhappy over uncomfortable, even if they know the only way to fix unhappy is to be uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. So we have to go in and help them figure out, or they have to tell us, we have to help them, that what I'm doing, the way I'm doing it is untenable. I cannot keep doing it this way. When they're there, then it's fair game. Then you can say, all right, here's our first step. We want to come in and see what's really going on. I want to do it like an x-ray or diagnosis. And once you get to the belief that how in the world can I help you unless I really know what's going on? And I think if we go in with that mindset, that's the best way to understand it and to change, is to recognize if somebody pays you for it, you can give higher quality output. You could spend more time on it. You could put your best people on it, as opposed to creating some template because you can't afford to put much time because you're doing so much free work. I don't know if I've answered your question, but it really does.
You did, yeah. So my question is, I think you've mentioned about getting them to recognize, like getting the not doing anything is not affecting. Like you said, they're unhappy is okay, perfectly fine, but they need to get uncomfortable. But sometimes it is an emotional conversation, right? Where 100%. You're trying to get emotionally involved in that project or problem or whatever that they're dealing with. Yes. But as a salesperson, that's the place that you are trying to avoid. And I'm also uncomfortable when it comes to getting that emotion on the table.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the thing. Will you agree with me, Samuel, that people make decisions emotionally and then they justify them intellectually?
I do.
I know that people make decisions emotionally. And then they send the little press agent out to say how smart they were. But honestly, people make decisions. They're either moving away from, the technical term is pain, or they're moving towards pleasure. What we need to do, so a lot of people say, it is our responsibility. One of the core tenets in my practice that we teach our clients is to ask, not tell. I believe if you look at somebody and say, you've got a problem, this is the problem, you got to fix it, before you've earned the right, they will just tell you you're wrong. And so part of this is to have them tell us, when somebody shares a problem, first, our marketing isn't very good, We use something called the pain test, which is something that I stole from, there's a type of, I guess it's people that work with alcoholics and drug abusers. They're, what are they called? Psychologists, whatever, that work with them, counselors. And they're trying to decide who they should recommend for rehab or not. And they have this thing called, it's called motivational interviewing. And what you're trying to do is figure out if that person has enough internal motivation to make a change on their own. Because those people, if they have their own internal reasons, they have a much higher chance of succeeding than if the only reason that they're going to rehab is because their wife or their dad or their whatever said, you need to go to rehab. And then they're bitter and they don't have any reason themselves. So motivational interviewing is stole a process out. There's a series of questions, or part of it is a series of questions that helps tease out, once they admit a problem, how do we help them figure out what the consequences are? Tell me more about that. Can you give me an example? How long has that been going on? What have you tried to do about it? Did that work? God, what do you suppose it's cost you? And then, is that a big deal? Right? So all that is teasing out consequences. It's my belief that until somebody says something, until it comes out of their mouth, it's not real. Once they've said it, though, there's something amazing about the vibration of the jaw. That is their reality. That is their truth, right? And so from there, once they've said, yes, it's a big deal. Now, you're right. It makes us who are listening, when somebody is sharing things that hurt them, telling a sad story, it drains energy from us. It is physically shown. It drains energy, makes us feel worse. And a lot of people say, it's not really my business to learn all this stuff. I just wonder if they want a marketing team. But what I'll tell you is, it is literally your business. It is your business to know, because it is through that discovery process. I think that we as salespeople, we benefit some from hearing this, but the main benefit is to the prospect who has just pulled their thoughts together, right? And gone through, answer those 7 or 8 questions, and they say, yeah, it's a big deal. And then the next question we begin to see ask for personal consequences is, what happens if you don't fix it? And that's where somebody can say, in the alcohol or drug abuse thing, I could lose my whole family. It would be Doug. Or if they need a marketing plan, or if they need a new marketing company, is, if I don't fix this, we're going down the tubes. Or I'm not going to be able to achieve what I want to achieve with this business, and that would drive me crazy. So the next question is, what do you think you should do? I'm putting that back on them. What I want them to, they can look at me and go, that's I'm talking to you. Or they can say, I had one person say, I'm going to sell the company. I said, it's a great idea. Right? What do you think the value is? But my point is, yes, it's uncomfortable for us to have that conversation. Probably somewhere around, how often does that happen and what have you tried to do about it? What you'll see is your prospect begin to stare off into space. You're not even in the room. They're processing all this stuff behind their head, in their brain, and they're feeling. And then as they, yeah, it's a big deal. And what it'll sound like is they're mad at us. The reality is they're mad at the problem. We don't create pain. We don't cause pain. We uncover it. Just know, like right now, if I got a headache or was at the gym this morning, so my legs are kind of sore, I take Advil to make my pain go away so I can forget about it. It doesn't solve the problem, but it makes the symptoms go away. Same thing is true. I don't know. I'll just speak for myself. I have over 1 million problems. I bet if I really sat down and thought about it, I'd probably have 2 million problems right now live in my life, right? But only about this number, 1 or 2 or 3, do I have the time, energy, give money to fix any of those things. So what we're doing by taking somebody through this pain test process is having them tell us, does this rise to the level that I need it to be so I can address it now? And if it doesn't, why in the world would we give them free information?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's a lot of value right there. I have a question though. So let's say if the sales process is pretty lengthy and you have 3 to 6 months to close the deal, they did all that discovery and the pain, uncovered the pain much early on, but then they forgot about that feeling and the emotion and all that connection that they had in that intro call. How do you keep reminding them much later in the sales process when that decision is farther along in the future?
My first question for you is, why is the sales process so long? Tell me a
sometimes
story
these
about
are
that.
when they're switching a vendor, they're planning well in advance because they have to make such strategic decisions, right? So maybe 3 months, 6 months before that switch, they're planning that change. So that's part of the reason why that they do that. So you can speed up the sales process as much as you would like them to,
Yeah.
and you have to play along with them,
Yeah,
provide them
sure.
what they need.
So sometimes, and I get it, right? They say, all right, we want to have a smooth transition. One of the steps in our process is the decision step to figure out when somebody's going to make a decision. And it starts with, when were you hoping to make this decision? Why then? Who else besides you needs to be involved? What would you need to see or hear from me to be able to make a decision? Who else are you talking to? And then how are you going to pick? Right. And so in our process, I'm asking for yeses and nos along the way. And so and I realize they're giant companies, they got their own buying process, but there are ways that they can show commitment early. I'm asking for yeses and nos. If they're interviewing 6 people, I'm going to decide if I want to be one of 6, right? That's my choice. You get to do that. If I do find pain there, then when I go to my next meeting, I'll say, all right, can we go back and talk about where we were before? You guys said you had problems with A, problems with B, problems with C. You said this, and which was causing these kind of things, and this is how it's impacting you personally, right? And then what did I miss? What did I miss out of that? I want to bring them back to there. Are those things still issues? And maybe what you talked about, maybe we're meeting with Jim and Sally in the first meeting, and we're meeting with Sally and Bob and Susan, who's on the executive team, in the second meeting, and maybe we got to go to the board in the third meeting. Right? And so we've got to use each of those so if Jim and Sally were the first ones, my agreement with them at the beginning of the meeting is, why don't we talk and figure out, Jim and Sally, whether or not you can recommend us to the executive team. That you can say, these are the people you need to be talking to. And so at the end of that, if at the end of this meeting, if you're not sure you want to recommend us, let's call it a no. And then when I get to the executive team and I understand the process, let's do this. We'll happy to meet with you, do whatever you need to do. At the end of that, though, end of this meeting or 2 meetings, whatever it takes, would you be okay telling us whether or not you can recommend us to the board? There are small agreements we can get along the way. I don't want to meet for 6 months and wonder, where am I? One of my clients came to me early on and they said, we've got a very long sales cycle. It could take us 9 to 10 years to close some deals. I was like, you lost your mind. It was a technical college and they sold training to private industry. And what we figured out after working together for a while was, it really took 3 months. They just started 9 years and 9 months too early, giving away free information. So I think it's important to understand the buyer's process and to have gates along the way that we're getting a commitment to move forward or we're not moving forward. And very clear as best we can. Go last. I always tell people, if there are 3 people, you need to go last because you can ask somebody for a decision if you're last.
Yeah. They're toward the end of their...
Yeah, they want, and you can say, hey, what did you not hear in the first couple of meetings that you wish you'd hear from us? What are some of the things you heard from those guys that you say, yeah, that was great? And again, I realize I'm speaking in general terms and everybody's situation is different. And I know your business is different and everybody listening, oh, no, business is different. It would never work that way. But the reality is your buyer has a process and you can choose to play their game, or you can work to negotiate different rules. If you can't negotiate rules that are in your favor, you can make a business decision to continue, understanding that unless you've negotiated some rules to make the playing field even, if there are 3 competitors, then your best shot is 33%. And what I've found is in every deal like that, somebody's already on the inside track. If you're not sure it's you, it's not. Yeah. So anyway, be particular about who you spend time chasing, especially if it's going to be a long sales cycle.
Yeah, disqualify as early as possible so you're not wasting time. So I know you have a book coming up. Can you share with our audience a little bit about the book, Some Will, Some Won't, and what can we learn from that book?
Sure. So the name of the book is Some Will, Some Won't, So What, Who's Next, which kind of summarizes my idea about sales. Some people will buy, some people won't. So what? who's the next person I need to be talking to. And the book, it describes a selling process about how you can engage with your prospects in a way that is transparent, and it's easy, and you are managing expectations, and all along the way you have equal stature with your prospect. And so you have just as much right to walk away and say no. You have just as much right to renegotiate the rules if you need to. And what people tell me they like is it's got a bunch of great stories that they tell me they're funny stories, and a lot of mistakes that I've made and how I came up with the process. Should be an easy, fun read. It should come out between now and the end of the year. And it's been a really fun process to do. So hope people will see the book and buy it.
Yeah. So you have a podcast as well, and you also have this practice. So can you tell our audience how they can hear more about your podcast?
Sure. Yeah. My podcast is called the No BS Sales School Podcast. You can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. I created it. I do short clips, 5 to 15 minutes on sales topics, sales strategies, sales mindsets, and sometimes just sales stories. And I'm supposed to be posting 2 of those a week. It's been about 1 a week lately. But again, short, to the point, no guests, just sales strategy, No BS Sales School Podcast. And then I have my website is walkermckay.com, WALKERMCKAY.com. We do training for individuals and for companies. So if you want to check that out, happy to have a conversation with you.
Awesome. Walker, I certainly enjoyed our conversation. That was a really nice sales training. I actually learned a lot of good nuggets and lessons from this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your life lesson and wisdom.
Thank you, Samuel, very much. This has been super fun for me. And y'all be sure, review and subscribe to Samuel's podcast. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.